Talia Redmond hadn't even found the front desk yet when she dropped the entire stack of HR documents all over the marble floor of the Everhart Global lobby. "First day," someone said, his voice smooth, low, amused. She knelt to gather the papers, cheeks burning before glancing up and freezing. The man towering above her in a tailored charcoal suit looked like he belonged on the cover of Forbes, not standing there helping a temp receptionist collect her mess. His navy tie was perfectly knotted, his jaw sharp enough to cut glass. His hair looked too good to be real. He held out a hand to help her up. "Yeah," she muttered, ignoring his hand and yanking the papers into a semi-organized stack. "I'm the temp." He didn't move. "I figured." Talia finally stood, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "You figured? You have 'I don't want to be here' written all over your face," she blinked. "I needed a job. Then you're in the right building." And just like that, he turned and disappeared into a private elevator at the back. No badge, no keycard, just a nod to the guard. She stood there, confused, until the HR rep appeared, nervously waving her toward the desk. "That was Weston Everhart," she whispered as she handed Talia a worn-out welcome folder. "The CEO," Talia's stomach dropped. Of course he was. By lunch, she already hated this job. The phone wouldn't stop ringing. She couldn't figure out the call forwarding system, and everyone looked at her like she was a temp rat who'd wandered into their corporate kingdom. The front desk was sleek and cold, set right in the middle of a lobby that looked more like a luxury hotel than an office building. She felt like a fraud in her second-hand blazer and 3-year-old flats. So when Weston Everhart came strolling through the lobby again, this time with 2 suited men and a Bluetooth in his ear, Talia kept her head down, but he stopped. "Your name?" he asked, voice cutting through the buzz of the lobby. She looked up, startled. "Talia," he nodded once. "Good." "You're not chewing gum anymore," she blinked. "I wasn't chewing gum earlier." "You were," he said, walking away without another word. She stared after him, stunned. Who did this guy think he was? By day 3, Talia had memorized the extension list, figured out how to transfer calls without hanging up on people, and stopped jumping every time Weston walked by, which was often, too often. He never said much. Just a comment here, a glance there. But she'd catch him watching her sometimes, like he was trying to figure her out. He'd ask questions randomly: where she went to school, what she was reading, why she was working here at all. She didn't answer most of them. She was just a temp. She didn't need to justify herself to a billionaire CEO who probably had designer socks that cost more than her rent. But then came Friday. She was alone at the desk, stabbing at her sad vending machine salad when he walked by again. This time, he stopped in front of her completely. "Do you like sushi?" She looked up slowly. "What?" He nodded toward the door. "There's a Nobu 5 blocks down. I'm going. Come." She stared at him. "Are you asking me to lunch? I'm telling you to take your break. And come with me." "I don't think that's," but he was already walking, and somehow her feet were following him. Nobu wasn't a lunch spot. It was a shrine. Talia had never been anywhere so luxurious. The staff bowed when Weston walked in. They were seated in a private corner, and within 5 minutes, 5 different plates appeared in front of them. "You really do this every Friday?" she asked, eyes wide as she tried not to look out of place. "I usually go alone," he said, "but today felt different." "Why me?" He met her eyes. "You don't belong behind that desk." She laughed, short and dry. "You know, that sounds a lot like an insult." "It's not. You're sharp. The way you handled that client yesterday on the phone, impressive. You were listening." "I listened to everything." She set her chopsticks down. "You're intense." Weston leaned back in his chair, his gaze steady. "You're not intimidated by me." "Should I be?" He smiled for the first time. "Most people are. Maybe they don't see past the suit." "And you do?" Talia hesitated. "I see someone who's used to getting what he wants." He leaned forward slightly. "And you?" "I'm just trying to survive this week without getting fired." He laughed, a real laugh, and it startled her. It made him look younger, softer. For a second, she forgot where they were. The next week, he started talking to her more, not just in passing. Real conversations, at the desk, in the elevator, during her breaks. He always looked like he had somewhere to be, but he'd stop and ask her things that made her feel seen. What made her move to the city? What she wanted to do long-term, why she reads so many mystery novels. "You're not like anyone I've met before," he said once during a late coffee run they took together. She raised a brow. Because I don't fall at your feet. No, he said quietly, because you see me. And I don't think anyone else does. On the fourth Friday, he invited her to dinner, not lunch. Dinner at a rooftop restaurant that overlooked the city skyline. She wore the only dress she owned that didn't have a stain, and when she stepped out of the cab, he was already waiting, jacket off, sleeves rolled, looking like a man from a movie. You look incredible, Weston said, his eyes sweeping over her. I feel like a fish out of water. You don't look like one. They sat under string lights with a private waiter and champagne that he didn't even glance at the price for. He ordered for both of them, but asked what she liked first. Every movement he made was confident, practiced, but with her, he seemed different, less guarded, less calculated. Why me, Weston? She asked that night, gently pushing her plate away. I'm a temp, you're this, he leaned in. Maybe I'm tired of people wanting me for what I have. You didn't even want to come to lunch that first day, she laughed. Because you were bossy, he grinned. Still am, Talia's smile faded. I'm only here for 6 weeks, then they'll replace me. They won't, he said simply. She looked at him. He reached across the table and took her hand. I'm not letting you go that easily. Talia didn't expect the message from HR the next morning. A full-time offer, permanent receptionist, benefits, decent pay, and a suspiciously fast transition into the company's more secure employee network. She stared at the email like it might vanish if she blinked. She hadn't applied for anything. By the time she slipped into her seat at the desk, she already knew. Weston had pulled strings. She was still staring blankly at her monitor when his voice floated over her shoulder. No more 6 weeks. She turned her head slowly. That was fast. He didn't pretend not to understand. I don't believe in wasting time. I didn't say yes. You didn't say no, Talia stood. You can't just decide things like that without asking me first. I didn't. I'm offering you something. You can decline. She folded her arms. Are you always like this? Efficient? Yes. Controlling. He studied her face. Only when I care about the outcome. She opened her mouth, then paused. What would you do if I said no? I'd reconsider the company's hiring policy. She blinked. That's not a joke, is it? No, Talia sat slowly, unsure if she wanted to laugh or scream. You're doing too much, Weston. I haven't even started. That night, she didn't go home. She took the long way to her apartment, walking until the wind cut through her coat and her thoughts started to settle. She wasn't used to being noticed, much less pursued. Not like this, not by someone like him. The next morning, a white envelope was waiting for her at the desk. No note. No explanation. Inside was a gift card to a high-end boutique. She looked up just in time to see Weston heading into the elevator with one of his executives. He didn't look back. She left the envelope untouched. At lunch, he appeared beside her in the staff cafe. No private restaurants this time. No champagne, just a tray of pasta and 2 bottled waters. I heard you don't take bribes, he said, settling across from her with the kind of ease that made people stare. I don't, she replied, pushing her salad around with her fork. I also don't like being handled, noted, and I'm not some puzzle you get to put together for fun. A flicker of something crossed his face. I wasn't playing. Then what are you doing? He leaned forward, elbows on the table. Trying to earn your time. Why? Because I don't want to wonder what it would have been like if I didn't. Talia's chest tightened. She didn't have a script for this. Not for the way he looked at her like she wasn't just another face in the building. Do you say things like that to everyone? No, he said, voice low. You're the first person who's ever made me mean them. She stood before she could say something stupid. I need to get back. His eyes followed her as she left, but this time he didn't chase her. 2 days later, she found herself stepping into the boutique after work. Not because she wanted the gift, but because she wanted to understand the world he came from. The place gleamed with gold fixtures and soft lighting. A woman in black approached immediately, addressing her by name before she even introduced herself. Mr. Everhart called ahead, she said with a warm smile. He wanted to make sure you were taken care of. Talia nearly walked out. But instead, she tried on a navy coat with silk lining and a single golden clasp at the collar. It fit better than anything she'd ever owned. When the saleswoman boxed it up without asking for payment, Talia let her. She wore it the next morning. Weston's eyes flicked over it just once as he passed her desk. "Morning," he said. She didn't answer. He paused. "You look good in navy." She didn't thank him. She didn't need to. The look in his eyes said enough. That weekend, he invited her to a silent charity auction. She said no. He showed up at her apartment building the next evening, dressed in a tux, holding 2 tickets and a single white magnolia. "Come with me." She stared at him, stunned. "You're not serious about you, completely." She hesitated. "I don't have anything to wear to something like that." I came prepared. In the black car waiting at the curb, a garment bag hung neatly on the back seat. Inside was a floor-length dress in a deep blue, delicate at the shoulders, elegant and understated. The tag was still on it. She stared at it, breath catching in her throat. "You bought me a gown. I bought you an opportunity to walk into a room and own it." She turned to him. "Why are you doing all this?" "Because I can't stop thinking about you," he said, "and I've never chased someone before. But I'd chase you across continents if I had to." That night, she stepped onto the rooftop of the art museum beside him, wrapped in borrowed elegance and a moonlit skyline at her back. The crowd was a blur of laughter and diamonds, but Weston's hand stayed on hers, grounding her. "Everyone's staring," she murmured as they stood near the sculpture terrace. "They're wondering who the woman is that made me forget a billion-dollar merger this morning." She turned to him sharply. "You missed a meeting." "I postponed it," he corrected. "For you, that's insane." He looked at her, eyes dark and steady. "Then maybe I'm a little insane about you." She didn't have words for that, so she didn't speak. She just stood beside him, letting the world fall away. Later that night, as the event wound down and the lights dimmed, Weston touched her arm gently. "I know this is fast," he said, "but I don't do things halfway. If I want something, I go after it, and I've never wanted anything more than I want you." Talia's voice was barely a whisper. "You don't even know all the things that make me complicated." "I don't want simple," he said. "I want real, and you're the most real thing I've ever touched." She didn't answer, but she didn't walk away either. Rain streaked the glass walls of Everhart Global as Talia watched the city blur behind the droplets. She hadn't seen Weston all week, not in the lobby, not in passing, not even a shadow of his tailored suit sweeping into the elevators. "He's in London," a passing executive muttered to someone else. "Board negotiations, at least 3 days." She told herself it didn't matter, that she wasn't checking the elevator doors each time they dinged open, that the silence in her inbox didn't feel louder than usual. By Thursday, she was restless. She stayed late, reorganizing the front desk files even though no one asked. She was sliding the last folder into a drawer when a low voice startled her. "You always overachieve after hours." Talia turned so fast she nearly knocked over the phone. Weston stood behind her, still in his coat, hair damp from the rain and eyes unreadable. "You're back." "I landed an hour ago." She hesitated. "You didn't tell me you were leaving." "I didn't know if I had the right to." Talia stepped back. "Why wouldn't you?" "Because I wasn't sure where we stood." He closed the distance between them, not quite touching, but close enough to feel his presence like a current. "I thought I made it clear," she said, voice low. "I'm still figuring this out. I know. You don't get to vanish without a word and show up like nothing happened." "I didn't vanish. I handled business, but I should have told you." "You should have," she said, lifting her chin. "I don't like being left in the dark." "Then don't stand in the shadows." Talia stared at him. "What does that even mean?" "It means I want you to stop holding back." She shook her head. "This isn't some boardroom negotiation, Weston." "No," he said. "It's more important than that." He reached into his coat pocket and drew out a small black box, not jewelry, a key card. He placed it on the desk. "What is this?" "Access to the executive floor. I had a space cleared next to my office, a project coordinator role. You'd be working directly with me." Talia's pulse jumped. "You want me to leave the front desk. I want you to stop hiding behind it." She stared at the card. "You're offering me a promotion. I'm offering you a seat at the table if you want it." She looked up. "And if I don't, then I'll keep finding reasons to visit the lobby." She laughed under her breath, the tension in her chest softening. "You're relentless. It's not persistence if the answer is yes." "I haven't said yes, but you haven't walked away." She picked up the key card, weighing it in her palm. "You realize people will talk. They already do. And you're not worried. I've been called worse than a man who fell for a woman smarter than him. She narrowed her eyes. You never said you fell. He held her gaze. I didn't have to. The office was quiet around them, only the hum of the lights and the soft tick of the wall clock. What would I even be doing up there? Strategic planning, market research, internal communications, things you're already more than capable of. And how do you know that? Weston's expression didn't change. Because I've read every note you left in the client log, the way you flagged inconsistencies in the scheduling system, the way you suggested a rework to the visitor check-in protocol. You've been improving things since the day you walked in. You were watching me that closely. I was paying attention. Talia's hand closed around the card. Fine, I'll see what it's like. Tomorrow morning, 9 sharp. Are you always this sure people will say yes to you? No, he said. Only when I can't afford for them to say no. The next morning, the executive floor smelled like polished wood and espresso. Talia stepped into the corner office Weston had mentioned, which overlooked the skyline with floor-to-ceiling windows. A sleek desk already waited for her, a nameplate with her full name engraved in gold sitting atop it. He hadn't just brought her upstairs, he'd made space for her. Weston appeared in the doorway a moment later, coffee in hand. Welcome to the top. She raised an eyebrow. You're enjoying this. I enjoy seeing people where they belong. Talia sat down, fingers brushing the edge of the desk. Just so we're clear. I'm here to work. I wouldn't expect anything less, and I'm not dating my boss. Then I'll keep finding reasons not to be your boss. She looked up at him. That's not funny. I wasn't joking. Later that day, he called her into his office to review a portfolio of their upcoming expansion plans. She expected to feel overwhelmed. She didn't. She asked questions, challenged assumptions, pushed back when he glossed over a set of projections. And Weston didn't just listen, he revised the model while she spoke. You're not used to people arguing with you, are you? She said, scanning the changes. No, but it's refreshing. You say that now. Wait until I disagree with your entire strategy. I look forward to it. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the skyline, Weston leaned against her doorway before she left. I have a place in Maine, he said casually. Secluded, right on the water. I go there when I need to think. Talia tilted her head. Are you inviting me to your lake house? I'm inviting you to escape the city for a weekend, no pressure. You think I need a break already? No, I think I want to know who you are outside a boardroom. She hesitated. You don't even know what kind of person I am. I know you're the only one who's ever made me want to leave work early. She turned off her desk lamp slowly. I'll think about it. Weston nodded once. I'll wait. As she rode the elevator down that night, keycard tucked into her coat pocket, she realized something terrifying. He wasn't just chasing her anymore, he was catching up. The lake house wasn't what she expected. Talia stood barefoot on the smooth cedar planks of the wraparound porch, watching dawn break across the water in a quiet blaze of soft gold and pale blue. The air smelled like pine and wet earth, the kind of clean that made you forget a city even existed. She wrapped her sweater tighter around her as the breeze lifted her hair. Inside, the scent of coffee drifted from the open kitchen. Weston stood at the stove, barefoot himself, sleeves rolled up and a navy mug in one hand. He looked like someone she hadn't met before, still precise, still composed, but softened by the wood-paneled walls and the early light. He glanced over at her. I was going to let you sleep. You didn't strike me as the kind of man who cooks breakfast. I don't. Unless I want someone to stay past it. She stepped inside, the floor warm beneath her. You always bring people here. You're the first. She raised an eyebrow. You don't think that's a lot to put on someone? He handed her a second mug and leaned against the counter. I think this is the only place I've ever felt like myself, and I wanted to know how you'd look in it. Talia took a sip, letting the silence stretch. You know this whole thing is impossible, right? Why? Because you're you. And I'm still trying to find my footing. You already have, Weston said. You just haven't looked down yet. She turned to face him fully. I need to be sure I'm not just some infatuation, the quiet girl behind the desk who said no while everyone else said yes. You're not, he said. Your chaos, your clarity, you make me question the way I've done everything until now, she blinked. That's a lot to put on someone too. He smiled, not amused, not arrogant, just quietly certain. I've lived 34 years without ever letting anyone rearrange my world. You didn't ask to. You just did. Later that afternoon, they went out onto the dock. Weston handed her a weathered book of poetry and a blanket, then sat beside her without speaking. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was full, like they were learning how to exist without filling every moment with a reason. She opened the book, flipping through the pages. "These are all annotated," she said. "They were my mother's." Talia looked up. She taught literature. "Used to read to me during storms," Weston said. "I kept the books after she passed. I didn't know. I don't talk about it." She closed the book gently. "You don't have to, I want to," he said. With you, they watched the clouds roll in from the west, the breeze picking up. He took her hand without asking. She didn't pull away. The rain came fast that night, drumming against the roof and filling the air with that electric scent of change. Talia stood by the fireplace, watching the flames dance, her arms wrapped around herself. Weston came up behind her, resting his hands lightly on her shoulders. "If this is too fast, it's not," she said. "It's just unexpected." He turned her toward him, his expression open for once. "I don't want to go back to the way things were before you walked into the building." "Neither do I," she whispered. He stepped even closer. "Then don't." She kissed him first. There was no orchestra, no swell of dramatic strings, just the solid thud of her heart and the warm certainty of his mouth on hers. It wasn't about passion, it was about permission. Permission to feel what had been building, unspoken, inevitable. When she pulled back, her voice was barely there. "What happens when we go back? We keep moving forward." The next Monday felt different. She didn't return to the front desk. Her new office was waiting, complete with a fresh set of files and a corner view that caught the late afternoon sun. People looked at her differently now, some curious, others wary. But none of that mattered. Weston didn't treat her like a secret. He didn't keep his distance or hide their connection behind closed doors. He walked with her through the halls. He asked for her thoughts in meetings. He deferred to her when strategy discussions hit a wall, and he listened like what she said could change the shape of his empire. One afternoon, halfway through a planning session, he looked up from a report and said, "I want to start something new." Talia glanced at him. "What kind of something?" "A foundation, education access, early literacy. I've been meaning to do it for years." "Why now?" He set the paper down. "Because you reminded me that the world isn't just numbers. It's people." They worked late that night, sketching ideas on the glass walls of his office, laughing when the marker squeaked or when Talia's handwriting got tangled into itself. Her phone buzzed at one point, an old friend checking in, and she silenced it without reading the message. Weston noticed. "You can take that." "I don't want to." He looked at her like he could see every thought behind her eyes. "Then let me take you somewhere tomorrow. No meetings, no emails, just us." She hesitated. "Where? Anywhere you want." She tapped her pen on the edge of the whiteboard. "I've never been on a plane." He stood. "Then let's fix that." The next morning, a sleek black car pulled up to her apartment before sunrise. She stepped inside to find him already waiting, coffee in hand, a blanket set beside her. The jet was quiet, luxurious, lined with soft leather and stocked with fresh fruit and a stack of books he'd picked out himself. As they lifted into the clouds, he took her hand. "You're not nervous," she said, watching him. "I am," Weston said, "but not about the flight." She looked over. "Then what?" "Talia, I've built companies. I've signed deals worth more than most people see in a lifetime, but I've never been more sure of anything than I am about you." Her heart thudded. "I'm not asking for anything now," he said. "I just needed you to know." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "I already did." Weeks passed. The foundation launched. Talia's name was on the board. She hired a team of her own. The office whispered, but no one questioned her again, not after the first campaign brought in more support than any initiative Weston had ever funded. One night, she came home to find her apartment softly lit, the scent of roses lingering in the air. A note sat on her kitchen counter, written in his unmistakable hand. "Come to the rooftop." She climbed the stairs, heart racing. When she stepped onto the roof, she froze, fairy lights strung between beams. A table set for two with silver and crystal. And Weston, standing beneath the stars, holding a small velvet box, she walked to him slowly. "You once asked what happens when we go back," he said, "but I don't want to go back, I want to build forward, with you." She stared at the box in his hand, breath caught. "Weston, I love you," he said, voice steady. "Not because you challenged me, not because you changed the way I run my company, but because you made me human again." She blinked fast, trying to see through the blur. "You don't have to do this, but I want to. I want to wake up next to you in every city, in every season. I want to build a life that starts and ends with your voice." He opened the box. Inside, a ring, simple, elegant, nothing flashy. Just like everything she'd ever wanted but never thought she could have. He didn't kneel. He didn't need to. "Talia Redmond," he said. "Will you marry me?" She didn't hesitate. "Yes." And as he slipped the ring on her finger, the city lights flickering below them, she realized something she hadn't dared believe. The receptionist had become so much more. And the CEO had fallen, completely and irrevocably, for her. The ceremony was held at the Everhart estate in the Hudson Valley, a sprawling property tucked behind wrought iron gates and towering elms. The manor had belonged to Weston's grandfather, but it was Talia who made it feel alive again. She walked the grounds weeks before the wedding, sketching ideas in a leather-bound journal, refusing to let planners make every decision for her. She didn't want spectacle. She wanted something that felt like them. Weston found her one evening near the greenhouse, barefoot in the grass, her dress hem dusted with soil, murmuring to a florist about wildflowers and weather patterns. "I didn't think you'd care this much about hydrangeas," he said, stepping up beside her. "I don't," she replied, brushing dirt from her fingers. "But I care about what it means," he nodded once. "So do I." She didn't have to explain that it wasn't about the flowers. It was about building something with her hands, something real, something that would last. The guest list was small. Only those who mattered. No journalists. No executives flown in from Zurich or Shanghai. Just family, friends, and the few people who had stood by them when no one else thought it would work. Weston's father sent his regrets and a vintage bottle of wine. Talia didn't ask questions. She didn't need to. On the morning of the wedding, a quiet fog hung low over the trees, casting the landscape in soft silver. Talia stood before a full-length mirror in a room that had once belonged to Weston's grandmother, her reflection steady and calm. She wore a gown the color of moonlight, simple, sleeveless, with a line of buttons trailing down her spine. Her hair was pinned with pearl-tipped pins she'd chosen herself, and around her wrist was a bracelet Weston had given her that morning, engraved with the coordinates of the lake house where he first told her he loved her. There was a knock on the door. "Come in." Weston's sister Elise stepped inside, carrying a velvet box. "He asked me to bring this." Talia opened it slowly. Inside was a folded page torn from one of the poetry books she'd read on the dock. The same faded ink, the same margin notes. At the bottom, in Weston's handwriting, were 6 words. "Nothing was real until I met you." She closed her eyes. Outside, the chairs were set in a half-circle beneath the old oak tree where Weston used to read as a boy. The canopy of leaves filtered the sunlight into gold dust. A string quartet played something soft and unfamiliar. Talia stepped into view, her eyes fixed on one man. Weston stood beneath the branches, wearing a dark, tailored suit and an expression that gave nothing away except to her. She saw the way his breath caught when she reached the end of the aisle. The way his fingers twitched slightly before she placed hers in his. "You're late," he whispered, "and you're still bossy." His mouth curved just slightly. "I love you." "Good," she said. "Because I'm not going anywhere." The officiant kept the ceremony brief, just enough to hold the gravity of what it meant without drowning it in formality. When they exchanged vows, Weston didn't read from a card. He spoke from memory words he'd never said out loud before, but had been carrying since the day she dropped her papers in the lobby. "When you walked into my building, I thought you were a disruption, and you were. You disrupted everything I thought I knew about love, about control, about myself. I never believed in fate until you looked me in the eye and told me no." Talia's voice shook, but she didn't look away. "You taught me that love doesn't arrive with a warning, it just shows up. Unapologetic, unreasonable, completely inconvenient. And I've never been more grateful for anything in my life than the day you challenged me. When the kiss came, it wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, certain, the kind of kiss that didn't need to prove anything. Later, the reception took place under a clear tent strung with lights. Long tables filled with food, laughter, and stories. Weston surprised her by standing up halfway through dinner and sitting at the piano tucked beneath the far end of the tent. "You play," she whispered, stunned. "Only one piece," he said, "but I learned it for you. It wasn't perfect." He stumbled once, but he didn't stop. He played until her eyes blurred and her fingers curled inward, aching with how much she loved him. That night, they didn't go to a hotel. They returned to the lake house the same way they'd started. She kicked off her heels on the porch and he poured them wine. They sat on the dock in silence, fingers interlaced, the stars spinning overhead. "I kept thinking something would go wrong," she said softly, "that this was all too much." "It is too much," Weston said. "And it's exactly right." She leaned into him. "You know we're not going to be traditional." "Good," he said. "Because I didn't fall in love with traditional." The seasons turned. The foundation expanded with Talia now at the helm. They opened a second office in Denver, then another in Savannah. Weston stepped back from two of his companies, shifting his focus to ventures that aligned with the legacy they were building together. People called them a power couple, but they didn't feel like one. They felt like two people who'd found something rare and fought like hell to protect it. On a quiet Sunday morning a year later, Talia stood in the nursery of their Manhattan townhouse, watching Weston assemble a tiny crib with a manual he refused to read. "You know," she said, arms crossed, "you could just let me help." "I've closed deals worth 8 figures, he said, holding up a wooden spindle like a sword. "I can handle a crib. You've installed the side panel upside down." He looked at it, looked at her. "I'm testing vertical integrity," she laughed, stepping forward and guiding his hand. "We're going to be so out of our depth." "I hope so," Weston said. "That's where we shine." And when their daughter arrived that winter with dark hair and a cry that filled the room, Weston's hands shook for the first time in years. He held her like he was afraid she might vanish. Talia placed her hand over his. "She's real," she whispered. "So are we," he said. They never had a perfect life. They argued about paint colors and diaper brands. They took turns waking up at 3 in the morning, but they laughed every day. They loved without hesitation. And they never forgot the way it began: two strangers in a lobby, a challenge thrown, a life rewritten. And in the quiet, in the chaos, in every stolen moment between meetings and milestones, one truth remained: they had chosen each other, every day, without question, without pause, forever.